Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending on which time zone you're in. I'm delighted to see so many of you here in the room, and I know we have I understand we have a very large group online. It's a real pleasure for me to moderate this session, to welcome you to this one. I think it's a real privilege for me because I think this is one of the key sessions of the week, actually, on soil and water management. All the sessions are good. We've been hearing a lot, but I think it pulls together really a lot of the themes that we've been hearing since the start, really, of the World Food Forum. My name is Daniel Gustafsson. I'm Special Representative of Director General here at FAO, and worked for FAO for quite a while, and I'm delighted to come back periodically and contribute in this kind of thing. This event, as you know, is designed to share experience, knowledge, approaches on integrated soil and water management, governance, how private sector deals with it, public sector, farmers, civil society, in a way that leads to sustainable management and the achievement of the goals that are so interconnected and that require these connections between soil, water, management, and the way of interacting throughout the entire value chain and including in policy. So for the next hour and a half, and we really do have to finish right on time at 10:30 to get the next session going, we have two main speakers, and then we will have a panel discussion that follows, and I'm sure is going to be very good. This event, as I know a lot of you, both in the room and online, know, follows up to the Global Symposium on Soils and Water and the Rome Water Dialogue that was held 2 weeks ago here at FAO. And as with all the other sessions this week, we invite you, of course, to promote messages from the symposium and the dialogue by engaging on your social media accounts using #WaterAction and #SoilAction. So it's now my pleasure to kick off the event by inviting the Director General of Food and Agriculture Organization, Dr. Chudong Yu, to provide his opening remarks. Let me just greet you because I did see you before. Welcome, welcome. Did you? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and thank you, Don, and happy to see Don come back and to contribute his experience and his politeness. It's our face, FAO face, gentleman face. And a lovely day we start, as you see, that's a day 4 officially, but it's a day 6 for me. And FAO, we need some business really happening here to make this cold room, cold buildings warming up. And even before the over warming up, I saw the kids already come, school students come. So last year, most of them are young kindergarten kids, but now they move up to the primary and the middle school students. So that's really international, intergeneration cross. And that is on behalf of our young at heart, right? So from him down to the kindergarten. So that's what I built up the 40 years for the future, not only 20 years. So thank you, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And dear colleagues, we all know well the challenges brought by the climate crisis and the human man-made pressure on our finite soil and natural resources. FAO latest report shows that globally, our land and water system are at a breaking point, with 1/3 of soil degradation. Healthy soil and water, together with biodiversity, are the foundation of the efficient, resilient, and sustainable agrifood system. 2 weeks ago, we organized a global symposium on soil and water, as well as a second Roma Water Dialogue, as a part of the FAO Water Journey. The meetings made clear recommendations. First, we needed a comprehensive, integrated approach to address food and water insecurity together and with climate crisis. FAO addressed these challenges with a focus on transforming agri-food systems through science, technology, and innovation. Second, we needed to develop and strengthen integrated information system to address pressing multi-sector challenges which should be available to all, especially to farmers, who are the custodians of our natural resource management and the final control. Yeah? The farmers is the final controller for our natural resources. If they don't empower, they don't take a responsibility, they don't get necessary support from the society, not only from government. It's public goods, not only for farmers, for all of us. To support agri-food system transformation, FAO use innovative applications such as AI, big data, and the diverse data sources to create the high-quality data and the information needed for sound water, land use planning, policy, and investment. Still, we don't have a global, rationalized land use design. That's one thing, if we should take the ownership. Mapping global land, the soil, and then to have rationalized the recommendations how to use the land, include every country, every member on this planet. Still, it's broken. Some countries that have a small, big countries, maybe they have very general design, and small countries even they don't have. They just let the farmers, the local community use the land what they want, no matter what purpose, for agriculture, for industry, for labor, and for public schools, and so on and so forth. That's one of the big gap FAO should take a leading role to do. Li Feng, you are young enough, you should take a leading role to fix this part. Don't look at the small things, small seminars. If FAO do next 4 years, you can finish that, the land use, because I hear that also Professor Jeff Sachs, but he is the chief economist. So, but we need the professional staff like FAO, we have so many, should be take a leading role, include the water. That's planet, how to use the land, not only land itself, planet. Any organization, I didn't hear how to use the land, together. Now it's possible because we have a cutting-edge geospatial platform and big data. So let's work together with all the key partners to make this happen. I'm waiting for if we can. And then we really can organize the big events in New York, in Brussels, in Beijing, or in Brazil, or in any places if promote, or Kenya, or Ethiopia, whatever. It's, that's something, it's a big business. Otherwise, you only talk about some behavior like a scientist. We are not a scientific community, be careful. I'm a scientist, I support the innovation science, but FAO by nature is not a science community. I always try to balance off you. You see, I talk about the global soil partnership. No, of course, it's important, but it's too technical. We should use based on the build upon. You only talk about the low bottom of the hilly mountains. How I climb the Himalaya mountains. You always stay in the bottom of the hilly mountains. So we have to climb together, of course. Optimize innovation for fertilizer and water recovery and water use of efficiency and non-conventional water reuse. Alleviate growing water security challenges such as population growth, water pollution, and the climate crisis. FAO, we offer a lot of technical products to support you, but FAO fully committed to the UN Water Action Agenda, improve the collaboration, partnership, and the capacity development catalyze the actions, especially for investment in research and development, so that the international community can act fast and at a scale. Because I said again, FAO, we are not only supporting the individual scientists, we support the members to make scale up, speed up. Yeah? Otherwise, we keep ourselves only at the small silos business. That's not the FAO, it's not the UN, in my opinion. Yeah? UN, it means the United Nations, not the united local community, not the united individuals. That's the national government, a local government take that more. Of course, we can offer some technical support and information support. Otherwise, we lose our own battlefield, or our always said that in Chinese proverb said that you always forget your own field. You try to tillage your neighbor's field. And then at the end of the year, your field still no crop, no production. But your neighbors are growing more prosperity because you have them to till their field. That's the mentality of a UN organization, people working here. They always look out field. I try to jump across the border to get the more territory. No, we have to manage our own territory first. More sophisticated, more powerful, more impactful, best our expertise. That's why the UN have so many special agencies. Yeah, FAO, please read our FAO mandate. Focus ourselves. Yeah, focus, 2, 3, 4, 5, not more than 5. Each area. If the more than 5, you have no enough money, resources, capacity, even time. Yeah, that's why I ask you one country, one special crop. It's not means only one plus A, but some country may be 1 plus 10. Some country may be 1 plus 2. Some country might be even only 1 that couldn't manage well. I can gamble you. So, dear colleagues, let's discuss professionally and also jump out of our own box. Yeah? Otherwise, years, you repeat the story from your own small silos. You should build up from small silos, become media, and then become the global, real global. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, D.J. Thanks very much, Director General. You know, as with many of you in the openings and others throughout the week, a lot of what the Director General has said in other openings other sessions, I was certain would apply in this also. So I was looking forward to seeing how he would build on it. And I think this is a really excellent introduction. And I can assure you, DG, actually, that the panelists and the keynote speaker that I'll introduce right now fits in, I think, precisely with what you want to see. And we've got really then this collaboration within, and of course it's taking place here at FAO building, right, and under FAO auspices on how to bring this bigger picture together, each in our own way. So thank you very much, DG, for that. And now it's a real pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Professor Rosa Poch from University of Lleida in Spain, who's also the chair, as I'm sure many of you will know, of the Intergovernmental Technical Panel on Soils of Global Soil Partnership, who will deliver her presentation on the importance of integrated soil and water management. to improve agricultural resilience and cope with climate change, and in particular also reminding us of what was agreed, what the recommendations that emerged from the Global Symposium on Soils and Water. So Professor Polk, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for your words, and good morning, authorities and respected audience. It is my pleasure to be here in person on behalf of the ITPS of the Global Soil Partnership to present this communication on integrated soil and water management, a way forward. When addressing the relation between soil and water resources, there are some previous considerations to take into account. These first key messages are focused on the need to consider water as a risk factor in front of soil, since water erosion is responsible for 20 to 37 billion tons of soil carried away globally to oceans or to the bottom of water bodies every year. Also, as induced soil salinization and soil solidification when water is not well managed, mostly in irrigated lands. And as well as soil pollution and contamination due to spills of contaminated water into the soils. In general, these risks are not perceived by society as urgent threats, partly because most of them come from non-point or diffuse pollution sources. But the main relation between soil and water is that both of them are the main synergic resources that allow life on Earth. In fact, the basic reaction that we remember from our secondary school of photosynthesis is that CO2 plus water plus sunlight make hydrocarbons and oxygen. Yeah? So it comes that the water necessary for this reaction is stored into the soil. And plants absorb the water from the one that is in the soil. This very simple question, this is due to the fact that soil is porous and can store water. Therefore, if we want to ensure that soils continue to produce food, our strategies must ensure that, one, water can enter the soil, second, that enough water can be stored into the soil as soil moisture and conveyed to the plant roots to satisfy plant needs. The problem arises when these both resources are scarce or not in enough quantities to satisfy population needs. In the frame of climate change, where water will be a limiting factor in many areas of the world, the great challenge will be to increase the efficiency of the use of water and soils to produce food. It is estimated that the world will need to produce 56% more food by 2050 to ensure global food security while conserving the natural resources, soil and water. The strategies to ensure it depends on the type of agriculture, rain-fed farming or irrigated farming. The latter one consumes most of the world's fresh water. In both cases, salinity, sodicity, and pollution are important risks that should be taken into account to avoid soil and water degradation. We must take into account that irrigation water withdrawal accounts for only 5% of total renewable water globally in the world. But there are very, very strong variations between regions, with the Northern Africa region using 77% of its water resources in irrigation, and the Middle East 40%. But some sub-regions, as the Arabian Peninsula, uses 472% of its resources. So there are very, very high variations because, for instance, Latin America barely uses 2% and Europe 1%. So these differences must be taken into account when developing policies. The good news is that when looking under a wider frame of soil health, the management strategies that increase soil organic carbon and biodiversity, which are two of the main indicators of soil health, also increase soil available water capacity and water infiltration. Therefore, they are synergical in achieving more resilient and sustainable agroecosystems in front of extreme events. But what are these practices? Basically, they have three main objectives. As I said, increase infiltration capacity, increase available water capacity, and convey rainwater to roots. Therefore, increasing altogether water use efficiency. Practices as mulching prevent the evaporation of soil moisture. Conservation or zero tillage also keep water into the soil, preventing soil organic matter losses and fighting against erosion. And precision irrigation, rainwater harvesting, or runoff capture prevent water losses by runoff. Some of these practices, even in rain-fed areas, can lead to substantial increases of yield. In this frame, the Global Symposium on Soils and Water was held at the beginning of this month, aimed at reviewing the relationship between soil and water, both as resources and risks, with the main goal of achieving sustainable and resilient systems that could help to find solutions for a coupled management of soil and water in order to ensure food production. The symposium was organized into 4 main themes: soil and water management in rain-fed agriculture, soil and water management in irrigated agriculture, soil and water management in the frame of soil health, taking into account this risk of soil pollution and also use of wastewater, and finally, all the aspects of governance, policy, and the policy frame and the recommendations for developing laws and mechanisms to make these practices applicable. It consisted of the symposium was a success with nearly 3,000 participants, both in person and virtually in the opening session, and around 1,000 participants the rest of the days. It was also a success in the sense that there was a regional global balance between the different regions in the world, as well as the different groups of stakeholders. The main one was research and academia, but there was participation of all other sectors with important representations of all types of stakeholders. The symposium consisted of an opening session with 5 distinguished guests and keynote speakers, of 4 dynamic and interactive panel discussions, 20 technical presentations, and also an artistic expo to increase the awareness of these issues to society. And altogether, about 20 hours of technical sessions and open discussions that were that favored the interaction between the participants. The key findings and recommendations of this symposium that will be the backbone of the document are the following. It is essential to increase public awareness on the role of soil and water for life and the need to preserve both resources since the early school ages. We must adopt sustainable management practices looking at both resources together that may differ between soils, regions, and socioeconomical contexts, and preventing threats as soil pollution, erosion, and salinization that occur when these practices are not appropriate. In particular, soil moisture should be monitored and taken into account when planning efficient irrigation and fertilization practices. Also, the agricultural systems must tend to combine the use of plants adapted to an increased aridity on the one hand, and practices that increase water use efficiency on the other. Also, out of rain or irrigation water, there are multiple sources of water that could be used for plants if well managed. Finally, green water, which is the water used by plants, should be accounted for in national water budgets. This accounting would make us aware of water grabbing practices between some countries, for instance, the one that is used for food exports, that in some regions that are threatening the food security. Finally, research in all these fields is essential to find systems that increase water use efficiency and minimize risks, as well as developing laws and governance tools to ensure their implementation. The outcome document that is being prepared now by the GSP, as all those after the GSP symposia, will contain important recommendations and a program of actions to be carried out by the Global Soil Partnership that you have here displayed. Finally, as last message, I hope that I convince you that soil and water management must go together to ensure food security and sustained use of both resources. And quoting Paul Harvey, despite all our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains, end of quote. I hope that the rest of the panelists will have us in putting all these concepts in practice. I want to give you a last message that the next World Soil Day, the 5th of December, will be devoted this year to soil and water. I hope that we'll celebrate it all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pook. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Pook, for that very informative and visually stimulating presentation that really paints the bigger picture of how things fit together and also brings us up to date on what came out of the Global Symposium, and particularly with regard to soil moisture and monitoring and how it all kind of fits together in really addressing these increasingly serious issues that we have been talking about for decades that really have made progress, but with a lot more progress to go. So thank you again, Dr. Pook. If we could have another round of applause for her as we invite her to go down to the audience, to go down, yes, and I will bring up our panelists, and if they could come up, I will briefly say who they are, and then as they're coming up, I'm going to introduce them. So the panelists are Dr. Malin Lundberg Ingemarsson, who's be joining online, and here in person we have Dr. Alex Schmidt, Dr. Federico Trucco, and yes, and Dr. Amarjit Basra. So Dr. Malin Lundberg Ingemarsson is the program manager and lead of the international policy team at Stockholm International Water Institute, SIWI. She joined SIWI in 2019, leading the work on the links between water, landscapes, biodiversity, and climate change. And she will soon be on by online. Dr. Alex Schmidt holds an MSc and PhD from University of Hohenheim, currently works as technical advisor for agriculture research and science at Catholic Relief Services, CRS. In Latin America, he manages the CRS Soil and Water for Agriculture program and the Water Smart Agricultural program in the Caribbean. Prior to joining CRS in 2010, he was regional coordinator for International Center for Tropical Agriculture, CIAT, based in Managua, Nicaragua. Dr. Federico Trucco is the Chief Executive Officer of Bioceres Crop Solutions. He's a biochemist with a PhD in crop sciences from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Federico joined Bioceres in 2005, first as a research lead on one of its R&D programs, and then helped organize and run the Bioceres Biotech Center, state-of-the-art technology incubator called INDIR, and in 2011 became the first formal CEO of Bioceres. And finally, we have Dr. Amarjit Basra, Director and Chief Scientist at OCP North America. Prior to joining the OCP group, he worked as a scientist and advisor at Larta Institute, Plant Impact, Syngenta, Monsanto. He holds PhD on plant physiology and biochemistry, concentrating on innovative crop efficiency with significant experience on optimization of plant performance and throughout different biological approaches. We had hoped to have another panelist, the Vice President of the Federation of Agricultural Cooperatives in Nepal, to reinforce the perspective of farmers, but unfortunately the connectivity wasn't sufficient, so we don't have her with us, but I know that the panelists, we've talked about this, will work in, and I'm sure if we have time for questions from the audience, also on the farmer perspective. So let me first start with one question to two of you, to Malin and Axel, and the questions are, okay, here we go, good. Good to see you. Good to see you, Malin, thank you. So the first question, kind of a two-part, in the realm of integrated soil and water management, what cutting-edge research or technological innovations show the most promise in enhancing resilience to climate change, enhancing agricultural resilience to climate change? And following up on that, how can these innovations be practically implemented and scaled to benefit farmers, especially those facing the biggest challenges? Malin, can we start with you on that one?
Sure. Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I am program manager at Stockholm International Water Institute, but I'm working with the international policy team, but I'm also leading the team Water for Resilient Landscapes. So good to know that. And I'm so very happy that I was able to join this hybrid solution so that I could be with you even if I couldn't travel to Rome this time. At Stockholm International Water Institute, we are promoting holistic and integrated approaches. And that can be, for example, using nexus solutions that address several challenges at the same time and where synergies can be identified and prioritized. And one such example of a nexus solution is restoration of degraded soils, which can have synergistic benefits for food security, climate, biodiversity, but also for water availability and hydrological flows. And here I really want to spotlight grasslands and rangelands, ecosystems very relevant for integrated soil and water management that are in dire need of research and innovations. Do you know that grasslands store 1/3 of the global terrestrial carbon stocks? Still, there are huge gaps in data, and as often, Africa is underrepresented. In a study from 2022 that reviewed more than 6,000 publications under the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, that study showed that an overwhelming number of publications focus on forests, 78% of these publications, while only 6% focused on grasslands and 3% on drylands. So here, more innovations and research is really needed. to reverse and prevent further soil degradation, and also to realize the Sustainable Development Goals. Formas, which is the Swedish Research Council for Sustainable Development, have recently granted funding for a new research project called Scaling Rangeland Restoration in Drylands through Synergies in the Biodiversity Water Climate Nexus. In short, we call it Restore for More. And this project is led by the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, SLU, in partnership with, for example, C4 ICRAF, the University of Nairobi, Makerere University in Kenya, IGAD, and also us at SIWI. And the long-term goal of Restore for More is to generate knowledge on this biodiversity water climate nexus that can contribute to large-scale, long-lasting and effective rangeland restoration in the drylands of Africa, of East Africa, sorry. And my last point is that I also think that we should move away from the farmer focus to become a little bit more inclusive and also give focus to pastoralists. And in a few years from now, in 2026, it will be the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. So we are very happy about that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Axel?
Trying to add to Malin's point on soil restoration, because in these 10 years we are working on what we call water smart agriculture in Central America. It's exactly that approach, restoring soils, because we have like 75% of Central American soils are degraded. And so through our approach to, and what we heard already from our key speaker, managing soils to manage water. So if you can do a good soil management, you will have water. But if you have degraded soils, you have to restore them. So there is a need to do this. And in order to do the soil restoration, you need soil information. So to your question, what are the, let's say, cutting edge research things? I will try to mention 3 things, but then I want to go back to kind of a bit of a farmer-centered approach, because as Catholic Relief Services, we are trying to get things on the ground and at scale. So I'm a bit between scientist and development guy. So let's focus first on the question you had on the cutting edge. And I think we have 3 examples what I like to mention. First is the information products are near real-time water and soil information at scale through remote sensing. And I just had a beautiful meeting yesterday with people here at FAO who launched the new version of Vapor, which gives you soil information at scale in a 300-meter resolution about root zone soil moisture, and which is exactly this kind of information package we need in the field for the farmers to see what can we do on soil moisture management, when it is necessary to do more, when are we at the stage where we can plant, etc., etc. So this kind of real near-time information at scale. Because we worked the last 10 years, about 3,000 farmers directly measuring things on farm, having a lot of evidence produced. But if we want to go to scale, then we need other technology. We can't do it by hand. So soil information through remote sensing is one cutting edge thing we should push and invest more to get more of this kind of information. Secondly, I want to mention what is going on in the field of soil spectroscopy. We need fast, cost-effective soil analysis, not only in the lab, because a lot of farmers cannot even, get the service. They cannot pay for the service. They do not have access to the service of soil analysis for good soil management and soil nutrition. And so we need low-cost technology in the lab to have a high throughput for analysis. That said, the best thing, and I know there are a lot of limitations still in the research world, but handheld devices. So extensionists go to the field, have immediately hyper-localized information, would be a huge step forward. I know there is on calcium and water content and all of that stuff still working needs, but this is cutting edge, and we should push also for this technology. I know in GSP we are addressing this as well, but it needs much more support. And the last one I would mention, which was initiated somehow in Central America about 10 years ago also, is what we call agri, which is agua para riego. In English, it's more or less water for irrigation. It's a geospatial tool which allows you to identify viable locations for water harvesting, rainwater harvesting. And I think when we heard the summary now this morning about how we have to improve our way of efficiently manage water, the water which is falling down, and most of our smallholder agriculture is on rain-fed systems. So we have to really, make sure that we use every drop for our crop. We need every drop used efficiently. And so having also this vision about, okay, the ones we cannot retain in the soil through our approach on managing soils, we have to harvest it. And where are the best places in the landscape to do so? So I think that is a third one we need to address more. There is potential. We are losing a lot of water. So, one thing which is like on my wish list is a comprehensive MRV system for soil health indicators at scale. I don't know how we will do it without such a system to follow up at scale with a lot of farmers, to give them information and see where we are on soil health, on the restoration of soils, if we don't have such a system. And I'm not talking here only about MRV. People say, oh, MRV, okay, that's carbon. Mm-hmm. I'm talking much more than carbon. Mm-hmm. And we see how difficult it is on carbon. So what do we do with all the other soil indicators? Mm-hmm. But we need such a system. And then, we can talk about data analytics and ICTs and whatsoever, but I want to finish a bit going away from the technologies, because we expect that all of these technologies get easily to farmers and benefit them. But what we saw in the last decade on the Water Smart Agriculture program, we need also to develop the technical competencies of farmers and technicians. And this is not just the traditional capacity building effort. I think we need much more innovation in the field of adult learning, and more integration of what we call biophysical and social science to make sure that technologies really get to the people and are developed together with these people. Mm-hmm. I think we can further on discuss a bit more about this continuum of research and development. And as CRS, we are trying to be like the bridge between research and development. But I think I'm talking too much, so I give it back to you.
Okay, good. No, very good. No, thanks very much to both of you. And I'm hoping that we're going to have time for questions and comments from the audience, because there's a lot of, packed a lot in there. I would just say one thing, Marlene, since you aren't here in Rome, but the emphasis on pastoralists and grasslands has also come up quite a bit in the Science and Innovation Forum this yesterday and throughout the week. So you're certainly not alone on that, but I'm delighted that you emphasized that. Okay, so now the question for our private sector participants. From a private sector perspective, what innovations and approaches are companies and industries adopting to promote and implement integrated soil and water management practices? Federico, could I start with you? And then we
Sure.
Yeah.
So thank you. Good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to also thank Dr. Chu for opening up the panel for biotech companies, which are probably not often participants in this type of fora. And in our case, I run a company that was started by farmers like 20 years ago that were the champions of the conservation agriculture movement in Latin America. So these guys saw what biotechnology could do to adopt no-till farming, essentially, and how improved weed management practices allowed us to move away from tilling the soil. But there was kind of a missing aspect there, which meant how can we also improve via biotechnology the crops that we use so that we can enhance rotational schemes. No? How can we move away from crop monoculture, which is concerning from a soil health perspective and sustainability viewpoint, to rotational schemes that allow for sustainable intensification of land use. And to do that, the most significant challenge is water availability. You know, if you want to have 2 crops in a year, you need to do better with the water that comes from the rain, and that's why we went into engineering drought tolerance in 2 very important crops, which are complementary from a rotational viewpoint, which are soybeans and wheat in Latin America. So you have a summer legume and a winter cereal that have been engineered with a sunflower gene. This is called the HP4 technology that is today commercially available in Latin America. And by implementing these 2 crops in an integrated solution, not just as an individual seed sale, but in a programs approach, we're able to improve the water footprint and carbon footprint of these systems by 30 to 40%. So at the end of the day, what we think is that there has to be technology innovation, but that cannot be thought of as an isolated technology product, but rather as an integrated offering to a farmer with business model innovation at the same time. So how can we change the farmer from being a customer to being a partner, a service provider? How do we create the economic incentives, the ROI, so that these positive practices are implemented? So when we engage with farmers and give them the HP4 crops for them to produce, we also come to them and say, okay, now we're going to shift away from chemical seed treatments, and we're going to use only biological seed treatments, therefore reducing 10x the active ingredient load that is used in those ecosystems. And then we go ahead and say, why don't we measure how much water are we actually saving, how much CO2 are we actually fixing, and what is the ecotoxicological index of the active ingredients that have been used for the crop management in the 2-crop system. At the end of the day, when you harvest that crop, we jointly owned the grain that is produced. But that grain is today linked to ESG reports. So we can say how much water was consumed, how much CO2 was fixed, how much of that translates into soil carbon, and what type of impact was exerted on biodiversity. That is, I think, the new commodity, or the way we should think about commodities in the future, not just as sort of a data-linked raw materials that can then be sourced to downstream participants with the information that is required for full transparency to consumers and end users. So I think business model innovation, coupled with breakthrough technologies, can do a lot in terms of integrating all these practices that we need for regenerative agriculture and essentially to preserve sort of native ecosystems from going into high input crop production systems, no?
Okay. So that's fascinating. So these data are on a farm by farm basis?
On a hectare by hectare basis.
Hectare by hectare.
And at the end of the day, the way this works is by having all of these in a blockchain ledger. Now, we do need to fix certain things because some of that is actively gathered. So I ask the farmer to upload the data and I pay for the data. Some of this data is passively gathered with slow orbiting satellites that can give you a proxy of some of these things by sub-meter square resolution. That today exists. We have companies with constellations that can give us, I wouldn't say daily data, but weekly data for sure, that is sub-meter square. How can we not use that to provide greater transparency? I think that goes far beyond anything we can do from a certification approach.
Right.
And I believe it can be done at a negligible cost.
Right.
So that's how can we do what we need to do, but in a way that is affordable for the consumer at the end.
Okay, no, very good. No, I'm sure that likewise is going to generate a lot of questions. Hope we have time for it. Amarjit, your views.
Okay. So first of all, It's a distinct pleasure and privilege to be on this panel and to be in FAO. And also thanks for inviting the private sector in this dialogue. So when the private sector, if you look at, is getting increasingly climate smart. So they are coming up with new products and new processes or practices to adopt, high yield, climate positive agricultural practices. So I represent OCP Group, the world's largest phosphate fertilizer company, and also developing solutions for responsible plant nutrition. Headquartered in Morocco, but I work for their subsidiary, OCP North America, as a chief scientist. A lot of my focus is on disruptive innovations in soil fertility and crop nutrition. The kind of food security we need or to feed the growing population, incremental yield enhancements are okay, but they need to be accelerated. That's why I focus on disruptive innovations or transformational innovations that can cause a step change in yield enhancement of at least our key food crops. The other new paradigm in the current agriculture that is emerging is do more with less. Grow more food with less inputs. So that means you have to be highly efficient in terms of providing solutions, whether it is water use efficiency, whether it is nutrient use efficiency. You have to come up with products and processes associated with that to achieve. So for example, if you take nitrogen use efficiency on a global level is just 40%, and phosphorus is close to 20%. How much wastage, So we have to come up with highly efficient fertilizer formulations. Which can be controlled release or slow release, and throughout the crop life cycle can sustain the nutrition of the plant, especially at key developmental stages which are critical for yield determination. Second thing is you have to provide the services to the growers or farmers that go with that kind of package, right? You provide, the fertilizers, but then they have to be applied in a very responsible manner, what we call as the 4 R's principles, the 4 R practices: the right form of fertilizer, right rate of fertilizer, right timing of application, right placement of the fertilizer. So these are the 4 R's. But I would go further to say there is a 4 R plus principle, which can add the 5th R could be the soil health. That is the foundation. So OCP has taken this science-driven, soil-centric approach to improve soil health. And as we heard in the very excellent talk in the keynote, that the soil health determines also the soil moisture retention, the green water, right? So they go together. So I think the soil and water have been taken for granted across the globe, and it is time that we stop taking them granted. And it's time to innovate. It's time to do all kinds of researches, whether academia or industry or other research institutes, fundamental research, translational research, adaptive research, which is context specific. Soil conditions in Africa continent are very different from North American agriculture point of view. So we have to be adaptive research. So farmers will adapt research, private sector will commercialize the products and processes and give them as a package. It's good for business also because you have a differentiated package. You are not only providing your product, but also providing an agronomic service package or a digital product or digital service that goes so that the farmer can make an informed decision based on a data-driven, intelligent water intelligence or nutrient intelligence. So the companies are getting, whether they are seed companies, whether they are fertilizer companies, I can speak more on behalf of fertilizer companies because I work in that sector, are increasingly becoming integrated, package-driven, that you provide both your product and also the package that assists the farmers to be more efficient.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I've got a final question for all of you and whoever wants to take it. And all of you can take it, or certainly not required, but it goes back to what was mentioned at the outset on effective governance, right, and how we pull these things together. So how can effective governance models bridge the gap between research, industry, communities, pastoralist communities, thinking of your comments, modeling, and their application in real agriculture scenarios, ensuring the seamless integration of new technologies into agriculture practices. Because all of you have touched on that in one way or another, but what do we do with governance? Malin, you're farther away, so maybe I would ask you, because I'm not sure you can see if I call on you, but let me just call on you now then. What do you think?
Sure, thank you so much. We need tools and technologies adapted to different stakeholders and different scales. And before I mentioned the new research project, the Restore for More, and one way to generate knowledge that we will use in that project is to combine multiple innovative monitoring techniques, such as citizen science and also remote sensing, as Axel mentioned before. And the combination of multiple techniques will provide increased understanding of the drivers of land degradation, and it will help to better track and target progress in restoration. And citizen science is a great tool for research to reach local level. And here I want to mention IGAD, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development in Eastern Africa, because they are really, really good at linking research with implementation at the national level for national stakeholders. So please have a look into their work if you want to learn more about that. I also would like to mention another tool that we at SIWI is developing together with the German Development Agency, GIZ. We call it the Water Smart Forest and Landscape Restoration Tool. And that is a tool designed to help new and existing restoration initiatives to consider water. Because there exist so many restoration projects in the world today, and most of them are not sufficiently considering water risks. So therefore, we are developing this tool aimed at reducing risks to water, both water security and hydrological flows in forest and landscape restoration initiatives. With this tool, we use water as a connector to holistically assess the priority actions and next steps of the restoration initiative, and whether they should involve policy mainstreaming or capacity development, or if they are ready to go into implementation. So here we are also building a help desk for implementation. And this tool, I think, is a good example of how to bridge the gap between research and practical applications in real scenarios.
Okay, thanks very much. The rest of you, Amarjit, please.
I can go ahead. So I believe in a governance model that is pro-agriculture, pro-nature, and pro-science, and especially the farmers, smallholder farmers in particular, and women farmers in particular. So this would be like, you know, the world is becoming like a global village, so we need a broad coalition of multiple stakeholders, you know, government agencies or, you know, private sector and other research institutions. So they have to, you know, it is time that, because we have very complex problems to solve like climate action, and we are all interconnected, and the agri-food system is becoming more, you know, kind of international. So that's why we need a very collective effort. So I can give you some examples how this model could be implemented. For example, OCP Group has recently taken an initiative called Green Investment Initiative. So we are trying to decarbonize agriculture via, you know, hydrogen-driven fertilizer production. Green hydrogen, green ammonia. So we are going to and it's a bold risk, but responsible risk-taking. Because in any business undertaking, when you want to, you know, have a model to, you know, really make an impact, you need an uptaker, you know, or off-taker of that technology. So we are the largest, you know, importer of ammonia for our ammoniated phosphate products. So if we go to the green hydrogen, green ammonia production, we are the big off-takers ourselves. So initial consumption of up to 3 million tons of ammonia we could just absorb for our business. And then if it is in excess, then we can supply to other, you know, Europe or somewhere else. So we have taken a bold, you know, initiative. That's why I believe in disruptive innovations. It's a $13 billion investment. By 2027, we'll produce the first 1 million of green ammonia, and by 2032, the 3 million to satisfy all our requirement, and then it continues. So that is one. The other one that we are actually implementing with farmers and with other agencies, one of our projects has 40 partnerships. It's called AgriBooster, and that's aimed at African women farmers to empower them. You know, agri-finance or fertilizer availability, a lot of, and regenerative practices for soil health. And then we are customizing the fertilizers. You know, generally there is a blanket type of fertilizers available, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And then the rate is also like uniform, sometimes recommended over one state is the same, although the soils differ very widely. Spatially, even within 1 acre, the soils may, spatially variability is there. So you need customized fertilizers. So what we do is we have mobile soil testing labs. We also do soil mapping, you know, with all the other cutting edge technologies. But we move from village to village in some like African countries. And mobile van has the wet chemistry lab. We analyze, okay, if the zinc is deficient or iron is deficient, we have customized blenders, small blenders. So we can on site produce the, you know, customized fertilizers with the right nutrient balance for the farmers.
Very good.
Okay,
Federico?
From a sort of a business viewpoint, I think the most important change in terms of governance and regulatory policy would be one that would try to harmonize the different frameworks that today exist. And by this, I don't mean sort of to force countries to accept different type of regulatory burdens, but at least have a common base. No? FAO could be probably a leader in this space where, for instance, if you have a new biological technology, you can file with FAO and have at least a basic dossier approved. And then the incremental work that might be required in different geographies be done in a way that is less demanding or it's expedited. Today, the reality is that there is a Green Deal in Europe that has a mandate in reduction of chemical active ingredients by 2030. And today, new products that are filed that will be helping us achieve that will not be evaluated until 5 years from today. And all of these will come at incremental costs that are on the millions of dollars. So for many companies, Europe, for instance, is becoming a very unattractive market. So I think to be able to have a unified base globally on how we are going to regulate some of these technologies and then have the incremental work done on a country-by-country basis would be a huge enabler of new technologies that we do need to meet these goals.
Okay, no? Interesting vision. Axel, what do you think?
Well, governance would like to see it a bit more broader in approaches also. And after being 20 years in the CG and more than 15 years now in development, knowing both sides, I try to be provocative and say that the traditional continuum between research and development doesn't work. Perhaps, you know, there are some people who might not agree, but from my perspective...
We'll soon hear.
Yeah. But there's Chuck Rice in the room, perhaps, you know, he has also some ideas on this one. But I think there is a fundamental gap on governance. We have to bridge this in a way that we have an agent, a trusted broker between farmers and especially smallholder farmers, the ones who are not able to upload data, the ones who are just like trying to survive, which have no access to internet and things like that, to take them into account from the very beginning. What are the real needs? You know, what are the let's say, low-hanging fruits we can do, you know, the first steps with? So we bring them in, and we bring into all of this arena then all the stakeholders. And that creates an enabling environment, that creates coalitions, that creates all of the components which are important to have to get technologies on the ground and scaled. If we talk about soil degradation, revising in Central America several countries and legislation on soils, we come up with 27 pieces of legislation in 13 institutions. I mean, like this, it's difficult to have a framework, enabling framework to work on, let's say, soil restoration. So there's a lot to do of coordination. There's a lot to do bringing stakeholders together from the very beginning, and we need this facilitation role. And at least we at CRS, we are taking this seriously and trying to do so.
Okay.
I don't know if we're always successful, but just a short comment perhaps. We are developing together with FARA and African Union Commission a framework for soil in Africa, which should be endorsed at the next summit, Fertilizer Summit and Soil Health Summit coming up soon, right. Next year. But this is this kind of a space where stakeholders can come together from different levels down to farmers, where we are interested in, right. To make sure that technologies go down and scale with our farmers, and especially the smallholder farmers in the field.
Okay, okay, very good. So I think I'm correct, Natalia. We've got time for a few questions before we go. I should say who I'm asking is Natalia Rodriguez Eugenio, who has actually put all the work into getting this panel together. Thank you very much, Natalia, for all that work. So I've got a number of questions, but I don't want to start with me. Who would like to start? Argentina.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to see you here in FAO in Rome. And thank you for organizing, Natalia, and all the team about this panel. I would like to raise one question that perhaps is, I would like to have Federico Trucco feedback, but perhaps also the reactions of the other panelists, which is, on one side, we know perfectly well that there are many vulnerable countries that have basic needs unsolved. They need to solve the problem of food insecurity. On the other side, and we are saying, well, they don't have the capacity to access to new technologies or to have the capacity to access to the new trends in innovations in agriculture. On the other side, I see new companies, new private sector working in terms of expand and extend these innovation processes and try to transfer knowledge to different countries. So my question is, how can we find the model to try to fill those gaps and not to condemn vulnerable countries to say you are not in conditions to access to the new technologies, or you are only to be always behind about what we have. This is something that is important because from the Global South, I think that it's not fair to think that the new technologies are not, has not to be able to be in conditions to be provided also to the most developing countries or the most vulnerable countries. So the idea is, how can we think in a systemic way? How can we think in a different way in order to try to fill this gap? Thank you.
Okay, Federico, go ahead.
Not an easy question, Carlos. Maybe one more for policymakers than for myself, but I think one rule of thumb is that we should make technology affordable. And what makes technology expensive is not patenting technologies, it's the regulatory system. No? If it takes you 10 years and millions of dollars to get to the market, then you're going to have to recover that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing is that the approach has to be local. It's not the same talking to a Brazilian Mato Grosso farmer or an Argentine farmer than to a small farmer in India or in China. Even the packaging will be different. I mean, I'm selling from 1 hectare production versus thousands of hectares. One is bulk, the other one so I think we need to understand the cultural differences and customized our business model to all these different situations. That would be my...
Okay, if I could, thank you very much. If I could ask or sort of add to that question, Axel, a lot of the technologies that you talked about, and of course Dr. Rosa Polk also mentioned this, on soil moisture. What impresses me in visits lately is the dramatic reduction in cost of soil moisture.
Measuring devices.
Yeah, that it's affordable for small farmers, but do you see is it the reduction in cost that, you know, the perm rep from Argentina is asking, or how do you see this in the work that you were describing?
Well, cost reduction, of course, is a factor. As I said, you know, it has to be cost effective. On the other hand, it is not just having the device and having the information, it's also then knowing what to do with this. What are the decisions we're going to take? For instance, we introduced in Central America digital soil mapping. That's fine. So we have maps. But what are the technicians doing? So we added a module on it to say, you know, how do I read maps? How do I understand maps? How do I translate this information into decisions and actions? And that's most of the time, you know, something which is also missing, because people come, you know, I have this new product.
Right.
That's fine. But how do I, in my location-specific condition, you know, how do I translate this into action and impact then on the ground? And that's most of the time a missing component, because people just come with a product and say, good technology.
Okay, I want to go on. I know we've got other questions, but let me just ask, and it has to be a real short answer, Federico, but who owns the data that you gather?
We do.
The farmer? No.
No, the farmer is a service provider. Remember, the farmer in this particular scheme is not the producer.
Right, okay, that's okay. I was just curious. Okay, question, yes, please. If you could introduce yourself, which I forgot to do earlier. Yes, please.
Yeah, Chuck Rice, Kansas State University. I got the shout out. There's another group out there that has data and information, and that's the private sector working with farmers. And I'm working with a company in Brazil, and they have a network, a farmer network of, I think it's 463 farmers, and collecting data. And then they're also working with remote sensing. So I think there's a wealth of data out there that could be used to transform the system and also transform or translate to other farmers. And another example of technology, there was several years ago, I was in Vietnam, and a 1 hectare rice paddy farmer had a smartphone and was looking at the color index of the rice and making nitrogen recommendations. So we don't need to have high-powered technology. I think a smartphone is fairly readily available around the world. And that's some tools and technology I think that we could use, even at all levels.
Very good. No, thanks very much. Yes, please.
Good morning. My name is Salwa Carbon. I'm coming from McGill University, Montreal, Canada. So I have a question regarding the action. So let's see we translate any of those data into actions, policies behind us to help us to make sure that the action that we take will benefit the production, but also will not impact the environment. So how can we predict, and how do you see as a solution? Because one of the questions that most of the time the Canadian government come and ask us as an academia, how can we predict what we are doing today will not impact the future? Because we know whatever we do today can have an impact on the future. So it's really, finding the prediction. If you can just comment on how the prediction can be better managed.
Okay,
to ensure
very good.
A good future.
Okay, very good. Thanks very much. And if we could have either a question or comment from Dr. Polk, and then we're going to have to get short answers, then we're going to have to stop. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I wanted to comment on this issue of technology transfer. And I wanted to point out, to make people aware of the many traditional soil conservation practices in the ancient world. I mean, there are many places, well, the ones I know are in my region mostly, in northeast Spain, and also there are plenty of them in North Africa and in other parts of the world that are wonderful water harvesting techniques. And the problem is that many of them are being destroyed to implement large machinery to plow and to work on them. So my question is, wouldn't we be better if we develop machinery adapted to work in these environments instead of adapting the land to the machinery.
Okay, interesting double question. How do we predict going forward, and can't we adapt better what had worked often centuries ago? Who'd like to go? Malin, hand up.
Well, I don't really know. This isn't really my area of expertise, but I'm going back to the citizen science again, that we to anchor our knowledge in the local knowledge, to bring in that when we do both in technical systems, but also in research and so on, that we always make sure to include the local knowledge, the traditional knowledge, and that can many times be taken in through citizen science. And that's also a way of involving local people in bigger decisions, in research and so on, to create more awareness. So that is at least part of that. And regarding predictions, that I'm not sure. I can't answer.
No, very good. Okay. Oh, thanks. No, thanks very much. How do you do it from a business perspective?
So right now, like, it's predictive agriculture, right? And academia should, collaborate with industry, because there are a lot of practical insights that information, fundamental knowledge can be translated or even scaled up to commercial level. So, for example, you can predict yield from the kind of digital agriculture tools that are available now. And if a country has to plan that what are my cereal yields going to be, and those tools are there, exist, and could be deployed, and they are not very expensive. Or same way, digital extension services could also be employed for the farmers. In plant breeding, they employ this predictive, selection. You can do a lot of experiments that were done in the field are now done in silico.
Yeah.
Because a lot of genomics information is available, the fundamental knowledge coming from universities.
AI.
Yeah. And then you can do select the germplasm, just do a lot of in silico screening rather than in the field, and then you employ the narrow down to the traits.
Okay. Good. No, very good. So unfortunately, we're out of time for questions. We have one more speaker, but let's give a big round of applause to the four. I think it was a really, really good session. So there you go. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I won't attempt to summarize, but I think it was a really interesting panel and generate a lot of really interesting questions for the future. So now in this final piece, before we close, and I think there's another group coming in at 10:30, so we have to move right along. It's a real pleasure for me to ask Mr. Lifeng Li to come up, who's our director of the Land and Water Division here at FAO, to give us his reflections. He's leading the work on soils, water, geospatial issues, along with coming from a really very interesting background, working on these issues in the context of climate change and climate financing. The lead on the adaptation fund that we're working on comes previously with experience from the Worldwide Fund for Nature and Wetlands International on how you integrate these things. And I have to say, in my own experience, in looking at some really very complicated issues that come up in some of our newish Green Climate Fund projects, he has never not had a good answer. You've always had a really insightful answer for my questions. So Dr. Li, please, the floor is yours. Very good, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan, for your excellent facilitation and introduction. Excellencies, distinguished speakers, panelists, ladies and colleagues. In fact, we planned for our DDG to give these concluding remarks, but we understand she has other commitment, so I'm happy to try to summarize the discussion, but also reflect some of the thinking from her perspective. Certainly, we have reached to the end of this very fruitful event, and really big thanks to all our speakers and panelists for their insightful and inspiring contributions, and to all of you for your active participation. Today's discussion clearly showed the great opportunities to address the multiple interconnected challenges of food security, environmental degradation, climate change, and many others through sustainable management of our natural resources. We heard important advanced and also innovations on integrated soil and water management from science, from technology, from innovation and policy perspectives in this session. Especially relevant is the use of emerging alternative water resources to replace, in some cases, and also complement, in most cases, the conventional irrigation water resources. We heard the vital role of managing green water effectively and water stored in soils really sustain the plant growth and also is the lifeblood of both rain-fed and irrigated agriculture systems for their health, their resilience, and their productivity. And information on green water is really needed for decisions on irrigation and fertilization. And we also heard that green water should also be considered in the national water budget in the future. One key solution that resonated is the recarbonization, the intentional increase of soil organic carbon through sustainable soil management practices. This is an approach that can transform soils into much bigger carbon sink, much bigger water reservoirs, so as to mitigate climate change and also increase the resilience to the drought and rainfall patterns in the future. We also heard that grassland hold about 1/3 of the terrestrial carbon, which is very important look at the entire carbon cycle. Soil recarbonization can also improve the efficiency of the fertilizers, leading to the cost saving for farmers and also contribute to much better environment in the future. We also discussed the absolute need for more accurate data supported by new technologies, fast and low-cost technologies, mapping and monitoring soil functions, including soil moisture, and also soil fertility, should be the first step before making decisions on soil and water management. This needs to be supported by capacity building, especially the farmers, so that in all the countries, in all the regions, both the decision makers, but also the farmers, they really move forward to the same directions as we wish. One of the key points we can also take away from today's event is that farmers, as our DG put it, the final controller. The final controller, the final decision maker, the steward, and also the guardians of natural resources. In many cases, they hold the solutions in their hand, but they must be supported technically, financially, and socially, so that they should be given the voice and agency, such as through FAO's Global Soil Doctors Program and farmer field schools and many others shared as today's event, so they can adopt and really expand the use of the good practice. Farmers shall be invited also to co-create, co-design, and co-implement the new business model and new solutions as we heard today. We also heard the solutions to improve the efficiency of water, fertilizer, and other inputs for agriculture, produce more with less approach. The 4 R's for fertilizer use is supported with analysis and information made available to the farmers. All are fully aligned with the 4 Mo's for agriculture transformation that FAO we have been advocating for. And those 4 Mo's really start from efficiency, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable. And we need to predict the impacts of the new technologies, new fertilizers, and look at the potential impacts in the future, as well as use and scale up some of the traditional knowledge and solutions in the much modern tech world nowadays. To sum up, we need to really champions. We really need to invest in and scale up innovative solutions, empowering and engaging farmers with appreciation, knowledge, tools, and resources. In this way, together, we can sow the seeds to a more sustainable, climate resilient, and water efficient future. Today's event is another major step in building of momentum for our collaborative actions to promote integrated soil and water management. As we look forward to continue this dialogue at our next major milestones event at the World Soil Day on December the 5th. I encourage you to continue your noteworthy effort, and I thank you all for your contributions and wish you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, now stay up here with me. Yeah. Okay, so thanks very much, Li Feng, for those concluding remarks. I don't think I have anything to add to sum up better than that, except to thank the panelists, thank the DG, of course, for his challenges to us, especially on what FAO needs to do. But I think a really wonderful panel, and I'm delighted that all of you were here. I hope that throughout today and tomorrow, some of you can meet with these panelists. I know you all have more questions on that, but thank you all for coming, and thanks to the panelists, and we hope that you have a great rest of today and tomorrow in the forum. Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Thanks very much. Yeah.